just talking about travel and the things that always stick with. I love the memories. I love seeing different sites of the world, but I just love the most about travel how it opens up my worldview and understanding that the world is a bigger place than what I see in my backyard. Like going to the Philippines in particular, like I remember, like I hated the trip at the time as a kid, but the big thing I take away from that is understanding that there are different people who have different views on the world, who have different like festivities and ways that they celebrate and ways that they live their life, and they wake up at different times and carry about their lives in different ways. And I think being able to see and experience that myself is always the thing that sticks with me. And I feel like I learn a little bit more about the world every time I travel, and not just like, here's the Eiffel Tower and it's like this tall. It's, yeah, definitely more the stuff about people and culture and worldviews and the way that we as humans live, and seeing how people do it differently is the part I find coolest about traveling. Because I remember, yeah, in the Philippines, we got off the plane and my uncle picked us up. And he picked us up in this vehicle called a Tamarao. I think it has different names in different parts of the world. But it's basically like a pickup truck with 2 benches on the back, and there's no windows in the back. And so this felt like a super unsafe vehicle to me. We don't have anything like this in Canada. And there's no cushions on the benches, so it's just a metal bench. And as we were driving away, this kid jumps on the tail of the truck. He says something in Tagalog. I don't speak Tagalog, so I had no idea what he said. He jumped on. My uncle replied, and then the kid just jumped off the moving truck. I'm like, wait, what the hell just happened here? And he was like, oh, the kid was just selling newspapers. Like, wait, what? Are you serious? You're jumping off on and off of moving vehicles just to sell a newspaper? And yeah, that he absolutely was. That's just part of the way of life over there. And that was just the start, tip of the iceberg of like, wow, I'm really not at home right now. This is a different place, different world, different rules, different mindset on life. And that was fascinating in hindsight. In the immediate term, I didn't appreciate it at all. Just like, man, this place is weird. When I think about the last time I went to London, I remember like somewhere, I think Piccadilly Circus is where it was. There was this, it was a public urinal, and I'd never seen this before. It was just, okay, I might need my hands for this. It was an outdoor urinal unit. It's just in the middle of the street, and there's like urinal, sort of like in a triangle formation, and it was just a place for people to pee outside, and I'd never seen that before. And I was like, wait, this is really unusual for me. And like, I didn't see anyone use it there, but I guess it's okay for the people of London that they just have that out there as an option. I'm personally not comfortable with it, but that's because I've lived my whole life never seeing that before. Maybe if I did grow up in London or other parts of the world, I would be totally okay with urinating in that particular circumstance. I was not. My wife and I went to Toronto Island a couple of years ago. It was a sunny day, and Toronto Island, it's like in the downtown core, but like it's in the middle of Lake Ontario. You have to take a ferry to get over there. And some of the things that are over there, it's best known for its amusement park, which is called Centerville, Centerville. And then there's people actually live on the island, but maybe the most curious thing about the island is that it actually has a nude beach. And I'd never been to the nude beach before. Every time I'd gone to that island, I always went to the amusement park. And on this particular day, my wife and I we're just going to do a lap around the island, walk all the way around and see what it had. And so the nude beach came up. There were signs for it, and we're like, it's clothing optional. So sorry, there's a difference. Clothing optional means you don't have to wear clothes if you don't want to, and nude beach is you have to be naked. Everyone has to be naked. Do I have the family-friendly tag on, by the way? Okay, so there we went to the clothing optional beach just to take a peek and not stare. I just wanted to get an idea of what that experience was like. And I will tell you, it is the most beautiful view of the city of Toronto that you'll ever see. And not so much because of the nude people, but because like the angle at which you are viewing the city is amazing from the clothing optional beach. And as far as the people go, most people were still clothed, but some people were not. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's go play some more Tetris. Oh man. Cuba was fascinating when I went there. Like, so Cuba it's a communist country run by, I think it's Raul Castro at this point. But Fidel, when I was there, was not well, but still under dictatorship. And I remember vividly, like, I was told a lot that the food was not great. And I remember eating the hotel food and no, it was not great. But there's a whole reason for that. Like, with the way that the system works, there's like no incentive for people to be like good at being chefs or make good food. And in particular, like, yeah, the government runs like everything. So, but there are like still places that serve good food that are underground. Like, there was one restaurant, I vividly remember this. We went to what looked like just like a residential building complex. And so we're like, I have no idea where we're going. My coworkers are taking me to lunch. I knew we were going to lunch, but I was like, wait, why are we in this residential building? And so we get up to, I can't remember what floor it was, maybe the 4th or 6th, something like that. And now we're basically, like, they'd converted most of that floor in that apartment building into a restaurant. And I was like, wait, what? Why do we have restaurants in the middle of residential buildings? And apparently it's like supposed to be a secret restaurant that the government doesn't know about. Though I've heard in recent years the government has gotten a little more lax on those types of establishments. But yeah, just because of the way the government has run particular things, it's driven independent like chefs and restaurateurs to set up restaurants in their apartment building. It was crazy. Food was delicious, though. That was some of the best food that I had in Havana while I was there. And Havana, just like such a fascinating place. One of my coworkers put it best. Like, it is a place that froze in the 1950s. And just the whole, with relations with the US falling apart and the embargo, they didn't really have the resources to improve the city and keep up with the times. And so, like, a lot of Havana is just, imagine like 1950s America just run down. And it's beautiful in a way, like seeing these old vintage buildings, and a lot of them are in rough shape, but there's a beauty to that as well. And just to think, like, yeah, it's a fascinating to see. I don't know if I want to live there, but in a couple of years, probably in a couple of years, the US and Cuba have started to get along a little better. People from the States are starting to travel there now a little bit. But like, at a certain point, I think globalization will, now I'm using like big words that maybe I don't know the full context of, the full meaning of, but I think at a certain point, Cuba is going to get modernized and look like every other country in the world. And in the grand scheme of things, it's for the better that the people who live there will ultimately get better conditions eventually, but the way that country looks and operates in its current form is fascinating, and it's probably going to go away eventually. That's kind of a weird thing to think about. My wife and I went to Hawaii for our honeymoon, and one of the things we did was we bought a tour package. And on this particular tour, this bus was going to take us to like a bunch of different landmarks, and we were going to end with scuba, with, what's it called? Snorkeling. That's it. Snorkeling. And we struck up a conversation with one of the people who worked as part of the tour. And she was like in her early 20s. She was born and raised in Hawaii. And she'd asked us like how much we love the island, and yeah, go on please. Okay. And like this was towards the later end of our stay in Hawaii. And my wife, she'd asked us like how we loved Hawaii, like if we loved Hawaii, how much we were enjoying it. And at that time, my wife and I were like, oh my god, Hawaii is amazing. I still think Hawaii's amazing, by the way. Definitely go visit if you get the chance. Hawaii's amazing. I could see wanting to live here forever. And the tour guide actually had a really interesting perspective on that. Despite the fact that she's living in a tropical paradise while still getting a lot of the benefits of being a United States state with culture and stuff. She was like, it's okay, I guess. Like, wait, what? The weather's beautiful here all the time. You have access to beaches all the time. The food is delicious. Like, why would you not want to stay here forever? And she brought up some really interesting points. She brought up the fact that a lot of stuff in Hawaii is more expensive than on the mainland, because a lot of stuff has to be shipped here by boat, and so they have to charge extra for things. But her biggest thing was just culturally. Not a lot of people, like, if you want to go see concerts, there's not a lot of music artists that tour in Hawaii. Culturally, there's not a lot of stuff for teenagers and young adults to do to party. Hawaii is very much centered around stuff for families. And so a lot of family-friendly attractions, and if you want to go to the beach, great. But if you want to go to the club, like, there's not that many options for you there. If you want to go to, like, amusement parks and stuff that young adults want to do that aren't the beach, there's just not a lot of options for you there. And so she really loved visiting mainland US for that type of stuff, the nightlife. And it got me thinking, oh, huh. It's interesting when the shoe is on the other foot, what the world looks like. I came back from Hawaii, and one of the things I bought was a hoodie. It was this like thick sweater, University of Hawaii. And my cousin who hadn't been to Hawaii at that time, she was like, wait, you have a Hawaii sweater? And I was like, yeah, I have a sweater. And she's like, why would they even sell sweaters in Hawaii? It's hot all the time. And before I went to Hawaii, I thought the exact same thing, and that's not actually true. Yeah, I used to think Hawaii was just hot all the time, and it's not. At nighttime, it actually gets really cold. So I don't know temperatures in Fahrenheit. I do Celsius. So, like, temperatures at night get to, like, the mid-teens, like a 14, 15 degrees. And in the daytime, like, at its peak, it's in the low 30s, which is weird when you think about it in those terms, because, like, Canada gets colder than that, but Canada also gets hotter than Hawaii. Just in terms of raw temperature, it gets hotter in Canada than Hawaii. And I didn't realize that until I went there myself. And it was just a cool little tidbit of world knowledge that I picked up along the way in my travels. I love to visit McDonald's in different parts of the world because McDonald's menus are different by region. They always like to put in different meals that are relevant to the audience of that community. And so in Canada right now, they are actually offering fish and chips. It's haddock and fries. McDonald's fries. And it's fish because out in the east coast of Canada, there's a lot of fishing going on, your Newfoundlands and New Brunswicks. And so that's kind of a nod to that particular part of Canada. And then also, representing the west coast part of Canada, is that they have a Nanaimo bar flavored McFlurry. And so if you've never heard of the Nanaimo bar before, it is this, like, dessert that it's a 3-layer dessert. The top layer is chocolate. The middle layer is a custard butter. and the bottom layer is like a coconut crumble. You don't actually bake it or anything, you just kind of piece it together. It's amazing. The Nanaimo bars are delicious. I had no idea that was Canadian until relatively recently. And so yes, if you come to Canada in the next few weeks or months, definitely try the Canadian specific fish and chips and see what's there. Okay, here's one thing about Florida. And I think this is probably about the US as a whole. Proportion size for food is crazy there. And like my wife and I visited Orlando a couple years ago, and just like the food is so cheap, and you get so much of it in any given serving. And the thing that always like freaked me out the most was the turkey leg, because like imagine like a full size. I mean, Tony, you've been to Florida, you've probably seen this, but for everybody else who hasn't been to Florida yet, they serve a full turkey leg as a snack. You can go to a stand and just buy this giant turkey leg that they assume an individual person is just going to like hold on to the bone and just eat it like that, like Flintstones type stuff. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, in I would see that turkey leg in Canada at Christmas time, and we would put it on like a serving plate, and we would cut it up and serve it between 4 people. That is not a snack that we would eat for just one person, just biting it off the bone. That is crazy. Well, that is different. I don't want to say crazy. It is something that is alien to me. I don't want to sit here burning bridges with everybody in the world. But the turkey leg experience, and there were so many vendors that were just selling turkey legs as snacks. Like, really? This is what we do here? Okay. I went to Orlando, and we drove a little bit. We saw NASA while we were there. We actually had a bit of a scare while we were there. We were watching this like stage show that was depicting the first time the US landed on the moon. And we got like a tropical warning storm, and they went over the PA system, interrupted the show like, hey, we've got a tropical warning storm coming in. We are locking down the premises to make sure everybody's okay. And for that 45 minutes or so, I was just like, oh my god, we're going to die in this storm. One thing I will say, and again, not trying to burn bridges with America or anything, I think American radio was really bad. I think as a Canadian, they play like Canada has laws around the percentage of music that you are playing. 35% of the music has to be from a Canadian artist, or like be made by Canadians in some shape or form, whether they perform the song, write the song, produce the song, or the song was recorded in Canada. 35%. And this has led to some stuff where, like, growing up as a kid, I was like, oh, I don't want to hear Cardinal Official again. You hear a lot of Celine Dion growing up, a lot of Shania Twain, and like super local artists as well, like Choclair and stuff like that. But when you go to the States and they don't have that law, and they just play whatever, Ariana Grande 80 million times a day. Like, I remember seeing the stats on this when I used to work in the radio industry. Like, your top pop station would play Ariana Grande, like whatever the hottest song is at the time, like 30 times a week, 36 times a week. And in the States, like an equivalent station would play that song 150 times a week. And so, yeah, the repetition on the radio in the US is way higher than in Canada. And primarily because they don't, well, they're not forced to, they don't have to protect the heritage of American artists, because that's what's popular in the world right now. When I went to Havana, I saw a total of 1 movie theater. And that one movie theater had one movie. And the movie they were showing was Magic Mike. And it's not even like Magic Mike was new. Magic Mike was many months to a year old at that point. And I found it crazy, like, we're in the capital of this country. They've got one movie theater, and this is the one movie that they're showing. And not to say Magic Mike is a bad movie. I have no idea. I've never seen it. The subject matter is not my cup of tea or in my field of interest. But this is the movie? I don't know. Interesting choice. Also, my glasses are super dirty. I gotta clean these real quick. Here, super random one. Okay. Years ago, when my wife and... Or not my wife and I. This is way before. I was like a kid at this point. We were going to the Philippines, and we had a layover in Hong Kong for a couple of hours. And I had to go use the bathroom, as you do. And I noticed the bathrooms were shorter. Like, the toilets were shorter. The height of the toilet was not the same. And I was very confused by that. But I know there are other parts of the world that have, like, the hole in the floor. I've never seen that before, and I would have no idea how to use it. So even just how we go to the bathroom, it can vary from place to place. But I think, yeah, we talked about England has that too, that public urinal thing. It's fascinating stuff. Random sightseeing I did in New York, and I hope I don't get a restraining order for this. I think it's a fun story, but the last time my wife and I were in New York, it was a couple years ago, and we went to see the musical Hamilton. We were there just for the weekend, and so on the first night, we were just like wandering around the streets of Manhattan, and I was like, wait, Taylor Swift lives around here, right? And because I remember, like, a couple years ago, she moved to New York City, and she has, like, a building here. And I was like, how hard do we think it would be to, like, figure out where Taylor Swift lives? Did a quick Google search, found the building, and we went and did a little trip, and then we're like, oh, here it is. This is Taylor Swift's house. Oh, jeez. And so, yeah, that was kind of... Apparently, she has, like, the top... Without going into too much detail. And I swear I'm not a stalker. I am a Taylor Swift fan. And I was just curious. And I didn't try and, like, run up into her building or anything like that. I was just like, oh, here's where she lives. That's crazy. Yeah, she has the top 2 floors of that building. And, yeah, dude... Just got me thinking about, like, real estate as well. I remember seeing signs in New York, Manhattan, that were advertising, like, 700 square foot condos starting at $1 million. Like, really? $1 million? And I know the real estate is super tight over there. Like, parking is nuts in New York City as well. Like, $30 an hour. Like, ugh. Space is so tight, and it's a super crowded city, and people want to be there. But yeah, $1 million for 700 square feet. Like, I've lived in a... My wife and I, before we bought this house, lived in a 700 square foot condo. And, like, and even the price that we were being offered when we had the opportunity to buy it, like, at a little less than half of that, we're like, man, that is a lot of money for not a lot of space. And for the price to be even, like, astronomically higher is nuts. And, like, I remember in the 90s watching, like, it was one of those, like, house hunting shows, and it was this, like, England rap producer, and he was like, I want to buy a flat in London. And again, 700 square feet for, like, £1 million. Like, what? Man. The real estate is no joke in certain parts of the world. But yeah, Manhattan, crazy expensive, but, like, there are places in the US where houses are crazy cheap. I guess we could talk about, like, my native land. We have poutine here. I don't know if you guys have tried poutine or know what poutine is, but poutine is basically French fries. Start with fries. You pour gravy on that, and then you top it off. Well, okay, hold on. I got the order wrong. I'm so not Canadian. So you get French fries. You put cheese curds on there, not like melted cheese, like chunks of cheese, and then you put gravy over top. It is delicious. And it's weird, like I've tried gravy or poutine in like other parts of the world, and it's not the same. I don't know what it is. But it is a Canadian delicacy if you get a chance. That and Nanaimo bars, you gotta try out. My cousins and I, a couple of years ago, we went to Vegas. I don't know if I've talked about this on stream before, but we went to Vegas. I know they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and I'm not gonna air out any particular dirty laundry here. But one of the things we did was we went to a shooting range with like live guns. I've never fired a real gun in my life. I'm not pro gun or anything like that. This is not that discussion. We went to like a shooting range, and it's super cheap to do it. Like $25 you get like a pistol and 3 clips to shoot at a target. And I remember a couple of things of that experience. They had like a ladies' night package, and one of them included using a Hello Kitty AK-47. And it was an AK-47 that was colored pink, and it had Hello Kitty stickers on it. And the other thing I remember, like, there's 2 other things I remember. One, like, I'd never really thought about, like, the power of shooting a gun until I actually shot a gun. And I came away with it with, like, 2 feelings. One, holy cow, this is amazing. I think the sense of power you have when you like pull the trigger and you see that thing go, and the kickback you feel, like, it's awesome. I love that sensation of firing a gun. At the same time, I'm holding this gun like, oh dude, I can end someone's life right now with this. This power is crazy, and I don't want this in my day-to-day life. I don't want this thing like anywhere near my regular life or anything like that. Like, I'll go to a controlled area and fire these things here and there, but outside of that, like, no, I don't want anything to do with guns personally. So it was a cool experience. Like, I learned a lot about like guns and the experience of using one there. And on the way out, you're walking in, we're still in like the gun shop, like / firing range. Shooting range. Firing range is a different thing. So we're in a shooting range, and just beside the shooting range was actually a wedding chapel. Like, you could actually get married in a shooting range. Talk about a shotgun wedding, right? And that's a real life thing. I didn't set that up just to tell that. As far as region to the US, I'm super jealous of the deal on McNuggets, chicken McNuggets. You can get 20 McNuggets for $5 in the States. And it's funny, like, Canada charges way more for the 20 nuggets than the US. But in Canada, they always advertise it as a meal for 2 people. Versus in the States, it's just for 1. We went to Michigan for the NCAA tournament. And our last day there, we demanded that he take us to White Castle. Now, this is around the time Harold and Kumar Goes to White Castle had come out, and we wanted to try it. Like, we saw it in the movie, and we wanted to try it for ourselves. And man, it is literally the worst fast food I've ever had in my life. I was physically ill after eating 2 of those mini slider burgers, and I wanted to throw up the entire day. And I'd never tasted fast food that bad before, to the point where, like, I feel like in Canada it wouldn't even pass, like, whatever the food code is here. And not even just like it tastes good, but just like something was wrong here, and it was not a pleasant experience.